Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. George, The Life of Reason, 1905. Assassin's Creed's most recent release has stirred a bit of controversy within the gaming sphere. I ain't typically interested in exhaustively engaging with the cultural aspect of the internet, but this particular instant fascinated me due to the veneer of skepticism. During the new emerging discourse, we were grounded with what were the reservations, espousing as to why Assassin's Creed shouldn't include Yasuke, and I don't know why this discourse has engulfed all of Twitter. I thought to myself, why not entertain the conversation amongst these supposedly diehard fans of the franchise? This is it? Are you sure? Alright, so visual. One of the most reoccurring arguments constantly happens to be about the truthness and soundness of our understanding and knowledge of Yasuke.
I'm not impressed. I'm actually just really annoyed right now. We have two main protagonists, one female, one male. Yasuke is what they want to say is the first black Japanese samurai, when in all actuality, he was not even a samurai.
Wait a second. The protagonist in the new Assassin's Creed that takes place in Japan is black.
He was a retainer, so he wasn't even a full-blown samurai.
Should his character be labeled as a samurai? To properly evaluate the components requires an establishment of who Yasuke was within the history books, and what is often told by most historians when reiterating the story to the public at large. Yasuke was born in Africa and sold as a slave to a Jesuit. During this time, Yasuke worked as a bodyguard, eventually traveling with his master at the time to Japan, meeting Nobunaga, who was exceptionally skeptical about the skin tone of Yasuke, thinking that it was body ink, so much so that he had him washed to confirm his suspicion.
Nobunaga first saw Yasuke's skin, he assumed he was painted black. He ordered Yasuke to remove his shirt and made servants scrub the man's skin to remove what the warlord thought was black ink.
Realizing that wasn't the case whatsoever, once it was confirmed that it wasn't ever the case, they became good friends. And for the most part, Yasuke was in fact big in Japan. A man was towering over most Japanese people.
Here is my mother standing right next to my friend Dario. My mother has the average height of a Japanese of the feudal era. So no wonder the Japanese freaked out when they saw him walking around, and no wonder Oda Nobunaga thought, hey, I'm making this guy one of my retainers. I am walking around with this guy.
It had an exceptional strength to him. Remember, when Yasuke was afforded to the other person as a slave, he was a bodyguard because he was an exceptional warrior.
23rd of the second month, Blackamoor came from the Christian country. He appeared to be 26 or 27 years old, black over his whole body, just like an ox. This man looked robust and had a good demeanor. What is more, his formidable strength surpassed that of 10 men.
He also had a good demeanor. Oda taking a liking to him, perhaps due to the conversations and the respect he had for him as a warrior with that ability, giving him stipends, land, and his own blade, as well as someone who had seen battle. Things would take a turn, however, for the prospects of Yasuke's future due to the Honoji incident. Afterwards, Oda's death was never confirmed due to the inability to find a body. However, Yasuke would then assist his son in attempting to get revenge on Mitsunari. They failed to do so, and many of them committed seppuku, but Yasuke was not allowed to do so, referred to as an animal, and returned to the Jesuits. No more information about Yasuke is known after this point. From this point alone, people will point out that there aren't any explicit mentions of Yasuke being referred to as a samurai, explicitly in any text. Some might point to the fact that he was given stipulates for the purpose of my video that doesn't actually matter, even though the ubiquity in which samurai was used as a terminology at that time wasn't all that prevalent. Everything I've stated so far has been established Yasuke not only as a warrior, but as a strong one. Understanding by most documentations and explanations of who Yasuke was, he was entrusted with a blade, including his own, standing by his lord, as in battle he was someone trusted. To me, whether or not he was given the title of samurai somehow feels extremely inconsequential. For example, for most part, most people who know the show Samurai Champloo would know that this character is considered a samurai. When you ask most people, is he a samurai, most don't go into some extensive dissertation as to what that even means. Rather, for most, it's just accepted as the truth of the matter. Yasuke's inclusion within this game as the character he is throughout history, at the very least, is shown to be a strong warrior, not the assassin. Trust me, this will be important later down the line. Culturally speaking, Yasuke has been a part of the media for quite some time. series. One doesn't have to look farther than the Netflix series. It was a horrible one, granted, but in that series alone, he was also depicted as a samurai. But if we need a franchise that depicts him and is held to a more higher regard, we can look towards the Samurai Warrior series and Noe series. These games were made by companies known as Team Ninja and Konami, both Japanese companies, something I also want you to keep mindful of as this video goes on. In terms of functionality, Yasuke completely fits everything that Assassin's Creed is going for, meaning he won't be the assassin in this installment. Yasuke's design, from everything I've gathered, has him in the most ideal version of what could be known about him through historical illustrations and reiterations by most people who have documented his history up to this point. I wouldn't be making this video if my analysis ended here. Amidst all the controversy have been a myriad of dissenting opinions about Yasuke's inclusion, giving drastically differing opinions as to why he shouldn't be the main character, contradictory at times, but somehow they are all collectively in agreement with one another. Perhaps it's a byproduct of them making their minds up before, or potentially it stemmed from poorly misconceptions as to what the Assassin's Creed franchise is. I thought it'd be worthwhile to address them here.
Alright, let's get it.
Assassin's Creed disclaimer is shown stating the following. Knowing this much about the series expresses that there is, by default, a liberty taken with whatever is occurring despite the historical landscape that the events are transpiring with their series. A couple of examples we can briefly go over is the fact that simply every protagonist prior to Yasuke's involvement are entirely made up. Main characters interacting with these people have never occurred throughout history, yet they are involved in major story beats within the Assassin's Creed lore. And
how would you behave differently? I would use it for the good of everyone. Well, the possession of the apple is both a burden and a blessing. Tell me, when you shake the earth, you feel that you are a slave to the people? Or do you wish to be their master? The people want you brought down. But you didn't answer the question. I am the only king here!
sometimes are straight up the antagonists of some of their installments, meaning detractors would have to concede that Yasuke has more of a right than any other character to be a protagonist on the grounds that they care about historical accuracy. Ultimately, I think there isn't a way you could talk about this without it sounding uneducated about the Assassin's Creed series and what it ultimately aims for. Some believe that the game deserves an Asian main, but no way is there. Oh, but some people might say an Asian male main who was a samurai within that realm in that period of time, ignoring how there are ultimately a multitude of games that transpired in that exact moment in time that they could play easily and are not inaccessible as a byproduct of this game existing. And at that point, you're not criticizing the game for what it is, you're criticizing a fan fiction version of what you've erected in your head. One of the last complaints is possibly the most intriguing, since some are claiming that this arbitrary decision is showing how clearly bad the game is going to be. And my response is, you haven't seen any game. A subsection of the discourse has been discussing at length how games are getting destroyed by DEI, diversity, equality, and inclusion, and it's made abundantly clear through Yasuke being put to the forefront center as a main character within the Assassin's Creed universe, believing that companies is working backwards in order to justify having them as a main character, instead of just accepting that this might just been the idea since the beginning. For this segment, I thought it'd be apropos to have it occur within a thought experiment. I'll create for you an alternative reality. Existing within this alternative reality is you being the head of the Assassin's Creed Shadows game. I asked you to pause the video and take a time to think over what you would have done. You're finished? Was any of that happen to include just altering the skin tone or removing the character outright? If so, then you have my complete and holistic permission to just leave the video out right here. But if not, then the problem here isn't the inclusion of Yasuke. You just hate the company. But if the problem with that usage of verbiage is that it ultimately directs the notion of simply a minority existing as a negative indicator of quality. No matter how much you want to claim that this has nothing to do with race, you fundamentally tied your criticisms to the existence of a black man within Japanese culture.
It's no good to have it open at your side. I want Yasuke to appear as an ally. Are they mocking Japan? They should have made someone like Saizo Kiriga an assassin. It's a bit disappointing. I wanted to play as a Japanese ninja. It's my favorite game series. I started with Syndicate and have played everything, so this is sad. I don't think
attempting to use the backlash while ignoring every single Japanese person who feels otherwise, continuously showing the like to dislike ratio as if it somehow proves your point without acknowledging that brigades do occur within the internet. To this day, most people don't know much about this game at the time of this recording and during the time period when the initial release was happening, yet people had extremely passionate opinions about it, some going as far as to say they don't have a problem with them creating this character, rather it should be a game that exclusively has an African character show up in an African-oriented setting.
Game where black people massacre Japanese people in Sengoku, period, is a perfect example of Yubi. Is this what happens when political correctness is taken to the extreme?
Yes, for some reason, Assassin's Creed set in Japan with Japanese people being the focus wasn't diverse enough.
Ignoring that not only have there been African-oriented games, but a subsection of the internet has devoted to attempting to criticize these games, inextricably attaching it to
of Sweet Baby Inc. proudly explains the method that she uses to force bosses at game studios to censor, alter, and diversify game projects she feels are problematic, terrify them, aka threaten them with the anger of the cancel culture mob. Okay, let's listen to what's said.
If you're a creative working in AAA, which I did for many, many years, put this stuff up to your higher-ups. And if they don't see the value in what you're asking for when you ask for consultants, when you ask for research, go have a coffee with your marketing team and just terrify them with the possibility of what's going to happen if they don't give you what you want.
Right, and so let me explain really what that terror is. 5 tweets that go viral, and then nobody actually cares after that.
Baby Inc. or DEI. Once again, even in games where there are a black lead, black characters within black culture, they're still being critiqued as somehow undeserving of their existence and position in gaming culture.
Kenzera Zhao painted himself as a victim while discounting the game after it was effectively boycotted on Steam for having hired Sweet Baby Inc. to work on it. And again, how many people were boycotting this because Sweet Baby Inc. was involved? How many people weren't interested to begin with? You know, that's kind of tough to know. But
do you know how exhausting it is to be a black nerd? First they say, I don't mind black characters, but when a black character shows up, it's, whoa, 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 Jamal. You can't steal characters from other people. So then we add new black characters to establish stories. And they're like, hold it, Tyrone. This is forced. Why would a black character be in my favorite intellectual property? So we make new narratives that highlight untold perspectives. And then it's, objection, Andre. This is woke pandering. You're making up black characters to push some type of message. Then when you get someone like Yasuke that was a real person, they try to contradict real historians. And when that doesn't work for them, they just take black characters and AI George Floyd's face onto them. I want you to know that it's okay to be nerdy. Whenever anyone tries to treat you differently, show them this, so I can tell them to go get some therapy!
The subsection I keep referring to hasn't or doesn't know about any qualities of the game in of itself and haven't seen any gameplay because none exists. Cultural war brain rot has completely ruined people's ability to engage properly, and I don't think people will give Shadow its day in the sun. But remember, some of the hardest things for people to have to admit is them being wrong. Sunken cost fallacy is described as a phenomenon whereas people are reluctant to abandon an idea despite it being no longer beneficial. I don't think this hasn't been any more apparent than people making up their minds about the quality of a game and how it isn't worth getting despite us never being given anything worth making up our minds up about, despite the prices. There's this clip by Asmongold that made my brain itch in all the wrong ways. He defends the idea that this game won't do bad due to any negative press about it.
Like, people are posting about this game like fucking crazy. Like, holy shit. People, a WoW streamer angry. Oh yeah, one of my mods told me that Taliesin was unhappy about me. I'll watch this in a minute. But yeah, people are going crazy about this. Here's the thing, guys, and I really want you to believe me, okay? When Assassin's Creed comes out, if the game is bad, this will have nothing to do with it.
In the main character's race. And while sure, the Terminate Online aspect of the internet, that includes me of course, won't be the deciding factor as to whether or not Assassin's Creed Shadows will sell well, but certainly the discourse online as to the quality of the game and people relating to the audience as to whether or not they should get the game certainly will be affected by the current discourse. The culture at large has changed significantly when it comes to marketing online. They're no longer just using major labels or gigantic celebrities. They're using people playing the games to market them. They're using people who have cultivated internet personalities, those more grassroots individuals, to sell them on the authenticity that this is a game worth getting. I say all of this to show that there is certainly a way in which online discourse can affect the sales of a game. And more importantly, there are videos devoted to people attempting to get others to boycott the game. Not only does this show the effect that the internet can have, but Asmongold is a primary example of how committed someone can be to a position without realizing it.
Poor mad because apparently this black guy, like, this is Yasuke. I don't know a lot about Japanese, like, when was this? This was like the 1800s, right? I'm pretty sure like early 1800s, somewhere around there. So this is the guy.
Power. Vengeance.
My understanding, by the way, is that's not what they did. But it doesn't really matter.
Straight up in the face of things that debunk what he's saying. He says the trailer doesn't display what he describes, completely ignoring how his criticism doesn't apply.
Story, like, it's just like with like, especially, and this is the case with like, I would say like more realistic fantasy. There's not a real situation where like a woman is going to be able to like beat 3 guys as an assassin.
I calls his weapon a hammer.
Kanabo.
Despite that not being the case and almost giving off the indication that it doesn't exist when it does. Worst of all, there's a video that mentions a lot of criticisms I pointed out here, and just take a look at how Asmongold reacts to it.
No situation where a woman is going to be like faster or more agile or stronger than a man.
I want to agree with his like, a woman couldn't take on 3 guys bullshit. She doesn't. Look, this is in the trailer, her failing to take on 3 guys, and then learning the ways of stealth rather than brute force so that she could then better take on multiple opponents. So even your dumb, sexist argument gets handled in this trailer. At one point, he's all...
It's just biology. You're gonna get mad at me all you want. It's just biology.
Asmon doesn't acknowledge how painfully wrong he is here, but states it isn't authentic fiction.
For history. Also, even if you...
I think that, like, again, you want to have something that's, like, partially believable. And I think that that's really kind of what the problem is that whenever you diverge too much from something that's believable, you then break, I think, again, that authentic fiction.
Whatever the fuck that...
Like, yeah, you know, if they made a game set in feudal Japan, starring a white guy, that'd be just as ridiculous. I'd also be just as annoyed. I don't know, nobody cared when William Wallace was fighting demons in Neo 1, because it's literally the same thing. Anyone who's gonna be like, well, William Wallace historically was a real samurai, and Yosuke was just a retainer. And we suspended our disbelief for him fighting demons. We could suspend our disbelief...
I never played this game. I mean, I didn't play this game. Like, now I have to defend this other game? Like, I don't know what, like, I don't know, maybe it was stupid.
He's speaking about the degree of controversy this game has caused with one decision. If you were paying attention rather than looking for a way to opt out of engaging, you may pick that up.
Again, this is my opinion about this one game. He does have a point, though? Well, I don't know. I mean, so, I think there's a lot of instances that, like, so was Neo 2 developed by a Japanese studio? I think it was developed by Team Ninja, right? Because people wanted me to play the game, but I don't know if that's... Yeah, Team Ninja? Yeah, that's what I thought, right? And so I think it's a very different thing whenever like a studio does it that's part of the culture, right? It's like they're native to that ethnicity. They're native to that culture. So there's a greater amount of like... there's not the assumption of like appropriation there because it's their own culture.
Asmon says it's different when cultures decide to depict it that way. Hey, Asmongold, do you know what other fucking game Yasuke is also depicted as a samurai in? I think it'd be worthwhile to just look into that. Also, doesn't this just sound like gatekeeping ideas and how they can be expressed based on racial groups? Personally, some of my favorite games happen to be when another culture depicts another society, such as Resident Evil franchise. That is a American culture stylized through the depiction of it being portrayed through a Japanese lens. So long as the research is official, it ultimately shouldn't matter. I believe this all comes down to one thing: a company that lost a bit of its goodwill.
Without, like, this was done very clearly because of, like, the race and gender of the characters. Like, that's why it's like this. It's forced, yeah. And like, I see that and it's just like, okay, this is just, I gotta take it that seriously, you know? Break some roads, too blatant, yeah.
Consumers have been burned by bad releases, games that feel like cash grabs, live services that ultimately feel empty when you look back at the dips of feed within the content. However, this is a big however. I don't think it's fair to speak about this as if we know all the developers.
Just because they say they don't like this choice, it doesn't automatically make them racist, even though absolutely I'm sure that there will be people, probably a minority of people in those comments, that are actual racists. They're doing it and they're not doing it for creative freedom, they're doing it for DEI, inclusivity, representation.
As a recording of this video, there happens to be over 12,000 members under Ubisoft. I can't speak for everybody there, but somehow we're allowed to say that the racism and bigotry that is on pure display sometimes on social media, and sometimes having a subsection of the internet that explicitly has devoted account to just being bigoted and have a large following, or just a subsection of the conversation or discourse, or that can't even be motivated as to why people are behaving like this. It just seems very nonsensical. We got fucking goofies out here claiming that they did all of this for the purposes of people not realizing how much the game will cost, as if they don't see the price tag when they go to check it out.
Market this game. Controversy? What do you mean? What if we made two main characters? One Japanese and one black. One black? But it's set in Japan. I just looked this up on Wikipedia. Apparently there was one black samurai retainer named Yasuke. Whoa. See? It works perfectly. You'll have one side argue that having a black samurai in the story is disrespectful towards Japanese culture, and you'll have the other side argue that he was a historical retainer and that Naoe is Japanese. This is amazing Twitter bait. Both sides will argue for weeks, and since they'll be distracted by arguing, they won't notice that we're charging over $100 for the gold and ultimate editions.
That all being said, ladies and gentlemen, this quadruple A game comes with some quadruple A controversy. The game's coming out at like $90 for the base game, and then they're selling like 3-day early access for like $145 with the season pass. And then of course, if you pre-order, you get access to a special mission, which I'm sure is just like 20 minutes of gameplay, if any.
Granted, this line of reasoning acts upon the domino effect for everything else that's listed here, because if they are an evil company unironically hiring demons that are employed through human flesh, then the narrative is excused. People get to pretend as though their espousements come from apolitical beliefs, and some do, but you should investigate why you have such negative connotations about a game that hasn't come out yet. If you just want a game with a male Japanese lead, most people wouldn't care, but that's not where this convo ends. They'll stop posting weird shit like this and then pretend like they don't understand how it's racist. But that in of itself is the biggest level of self-admittance. Gamers are wholeheartedly passionate enough to accuse corporations of greed, but are unwilling in any capacity to acknowledge how some of this comes across to a larger scale as being motivated by racism or even bigotry. That alone will always get this side-eye for me. I remember finding a video critiquing the new animated Arc series.
Kind of excited when the Arc animation was announced. I'm thinking, cool, dinosaurs, whatnot. And the first thing I noticed though, I mean, it's not a big deal individually, but why is it now every modern day animation with a black woman lead or a dark-skinned woman has to be a lesbian? Can we get some straight black women leads in animation, please? Invincible doesn't count because they...
And while the reviewer stated that they didn't have a problem with same-sex relations, but also says that the abundance of these type of relationships need to be depicted less due to how prevalent they are, or in other words, normalized. Because if we're just being frank, this is a criticism we would never afford to any other type of heteronormative relationships. We would never say the problem with heteronormative relationships is that they're depicted far too much. It just seems like a very bizarre way to critique a depiction of a relationship within a show. This on top of advertising the video while putting the relationship at the forefront of negative connotations that you have for the show is a bit perplexing, especially if you say that you don't really care about them existing at all. So who exactly is the audience you're looking towards when you package it in that way? I wonder. It's the same sort of weird side-eye that people get when they critique black media, and they can't deal without making jokes about how people are going to call them racist despite all the reasoning being sound and valid. I saw some of this creep up during the whole Black Panther discussions. Some people were cool and chill about not liking the movie, but some people treated it like it was a fucking political statement to not like the movie. And once again, some of y'all aren't. But pretending as though there doesn't exist a noticeable subsection that makes an easy career of being that individual who will act that way, gotta be something to acknowledge. Anyways, that's everything for me. I'm Andrew Apex. I'll be on the same shit, so you know where to find me at.